and the
Yes.
food pyramid
Food.
and all of this, all of these things. And so then they started pushing exercise, diet and exercise.
Yeah.
Low-fat food, diet, and exercise. So for the last 50 years, we've been, low-fat food and exercise, and we're getting obese and bigger and bigger and sicker and sicker from one year to the next. So I think we're going to have a really great conversation here. We have a lovely group of people attending. Welcome, everybody. Susan, Philip, Noreen, Mary Grace, welcome, Karen. Great. So nice to have you guys. So the way it's going to go is like this. I am going to introduce everyone here. I'm going to ask Kat to speak for about 5-10 minutes, kind of introduce her whole concept. And then we're all going to discuss it. I have some great professionals here. And you guys, if you have any contributions, any questions, any clarification you would like, please, send your questions over. I'm going to be giving away a couple of copies of Kat's life-transforming book. And I know this event will be inspirational and probably, if you're allowed to be, transformational on many levels. So I have with us here today the lovely Dr. Kelly O'Malley Matone, who graduated summa cum laude from California State University in 1985. She's a board-certified physician in medicine and rehabilitation, and she's on the cutting edge of all non-surgical beauty approaches. So very nice to see you, my lovely Dr. Kelly. And we also have Dr. Joshua Rosenthal, who is he graduated from New York Medical College in 2003. He's a dual board certified in sleep and regenerative medicine. And his focus is on circadian biology, quantum physics, heliotherapy, chronotherapy, photobiomodulation, photonics, stem cells. I mean, he's really he's about 50 years ahead of all the different medicine concepts out there. And so his capacity to transform people's lives has been absolutely nothing less than remarkable. And of course, our keynote speaker, our guest, Kat James. I'm going to take a minute to read her bio and introduce you to her to you thoroughly. Kat is an award-winning nutrition author. She's a researcher, a leptin pioneer, a syndicated radio host. She's been called a master of self-transformation by Self magazine, as well as the Jane Goodall of leptin. Jane Goodall controlled the monkeys, and Kat controls. You got it, okay? After she overcame an autoimmune condition, a liver issue, eating disorders that nearly took her life when she was in her early 20s. Then she taught the same mechanism that healed her to others and honed her original protocol by producing about 124 of these on-site events for people, coaching about 80 online groups with countless doctor-verified success stories in her experience. Kat once, really her philosophy when I first met her was so controversial, but it's being really embraced by neurological doctors, fertility, functional medicine, stem cell, metabolic, dental clinics around the world. She's been featured at spas and institutions such as Omega Institute, Canyon Ranch, as well as PBS Today, Fox, Hallmark Channel, TBS, Good Day New York, Self, Life Extension, Glamour, and Marie Claire, among others. She won't tell you this, but she's also a brilliant makeup artist. That's it.
Okay.
She has a lot of other skills, but I won't say them because she's
now it sounds scandalous. All right. All right, I'm going to share this. He decided to call this thing, and you can imagine how I chuckled, but first I was a little taken aback when in my inbox I saw the title of this event, The Fat Lady, and it was just funny. Good job, Alex. It is funny, and it's clever. And then one other little side career that I was doing when I gave up, the irony, which I'll share in my story, is that after this transformation, literally this flip after almost 1 year and 3 quarters of trying to just emulate a certain way of feeling that happened for like 4 hours, that was so miraculous to me after 12 years of an eating disorder. So I was trying to figure out how to do this. And when I finally figured it out, 10 dress sizes came off of me. And I just wanted to share this miracle that made me completely no longer be an absolute addict to food. And I mean a white knuckling it through every day for 12 years and being free and all of a sudden. And so it was so incredible. But the funny thing is that the phone just started ringing off the hook, and all they wanted me to do was talking about eyeshadow and what color eyeshadow put where, and what makes your lipstick makes your teeth look whiter, and all of that on TV and everything. Even like when they did a story on my transformation, they didn't want to hear about what really made it happen. And another little thing I was doing, back to the fat lady title, another little thing that I was doing at the time, as I was suddenly Maybelline's spokesperson and Max Factors and all of this, was one of the most quoted beauty experts in the 90s. Again, ironic. And but I also sang, and I sang while I was a Maybelline spokesperson, quoted on beauty. I also sang a Maybelline jingle. And I sang some other jingles. And when I saw the title, The Fat Lady, I thought I would share with Alex today that the fat lady also sings.
Well, finally, we've been waiting for this moment.
So anyway, back to the serious thing. You want me to pull up my
yeah, please,
just a little intro here?
Do.
All right. I'm going to try and share the screen here. And I'm going to go to, there we go. And then I press share. Okay, very good. This was my journey physically. So throughout high school, and these were times, like I graduated in 1984. These were times when everyone wasn't obese. I stood out like a sore thumb. And the majority of people didn't have the issues that I had. And I thought I was really smart by, listening to the government and doing some math that, fat had 9 grams of calories per gram. I think that's what it is. And that was less than, other macronutrients. So avoid fat. And this started me down a really bad road. And that was me on the left at 19, I believe. And then 29 years old is the next photo. And because the big drama happened, the near liver failure after a 12-year eating disorder happened between those times. So at 19, I had about 4 years left of binging myself to, I call elation, sedation, incapacitation. And that is how I wound up every single night. There was not one day, and then I would count up my calories, and I just consumed like 5,000 calories. So I'd say if I don't eat, or if I eat 200 or 100 calories a day for the next 5 days, then, we all know 3,500 calories equals a pound of fat. And that has really come into question lately. So I just thought I could outsmart it and then starve myself the next morning. But it turns out that's a mortal hunger signal when you have not only insulin, but leptin signaling. You got default messages to the brain that you're in a famine, and you can be stuffed. Some people can be stuffed in front of a buffet at the Cheesecake Factory and be literally physically stretching, but your brain doesn't know that you aren't full of food, that you're full of food, and will give you mortal hunger signals if you have, and also dopamine pathways that are broken. So dopamine receptors burnout. The same is happening to heroin addicts and to alcoholics, and you can see it in the comparative brain scans. It's pretty heavy duty. Then you got a whacked out microbiome, and you've got all the yeast and the pathogens. You took antibiotics. It's a bad thing, but I was an addict. I was a serious addict. So there are a lot of people that are just garden variety carb addicts, and they like their sugar. But when you have the burnout dopamine receptors, you can't stop. And I white knuckled my way through every single day for 12 years. And then one day something happened. And before I get to kind of my before picture focus, I just want to say, you can see the years down there. Something happened and I harnessed something, and it's doing the same thing for other people. It's really, truly incredible. So I'm going to try and advance this. Now, here I had all of these things going on, and these are, in retrospect, what I knew to be wrong with me. But at the time, all I cared about was calories and distractive clothing and makeup. And I was started working a few years after this photo was taken with models in New York City. And they were gorgeous Giselles. I was like another species. And my eating disorder just got worse and worse. Although I did learn what real food was in New York City. I was exposed to whole grains and alternative greens, whereas my home in Michigan, all I ever saw was iceberg lettuce, maybe an occasional romaine. And I learned about healthy, real foods and steel cut oats and things like that. And so I upgraded those things. And lo and behold, it did not take care of my eating disorder. And in fact, even though I could feel like a buffered effect, not as much of a black hole feeling before a binge and not as much suffering after, I would acclimate and get the same drug and spike my dopamine, even with blueberries and brown rice and quinoa. And so this continued until I wasn't digesting anymore. And the doctor said, go to the liver specialist. Your liver enzymes are in the 600 and 700 range. And they set up an appointment for me to get a biopsy. There was no internet yet. I went to a bookstore on the Upper West Side. And that bookstore, I looked up interferon because they wanted me to go on that because it was autoimmune. They said there's no viral hepatitis, but it's autoimmune. And they said they'd put me on that whether my biopsy showed something or not. And I thought, okay, then why get the biopsy? And I thought I'd look up that drug, and it's not a pretty drug, and it causes depression, usually doesn't work. And I was binging like crazy, and I said, I'm going to die. I really, there was no way out. And if I had gone on that drug and hadn't happened upon the information, I went into a bookstore, not a bookstore, but I did the bookstore, but then I literally walked uptown on Broadway to a health food store where I always used to just get like health food cookies, health food desserts at the bakery, raw food bakery. And I would binge on those. It didn't matter if they were from the health food store. In fact, that gave me more rationale to have more of it. And so I went to the book section and I looked up liver, and they all said, take milk thistle and dandelion. And so I started taking those things. Long story short, I got my enzymes to go down, and I couldn't believe it myself. I bought myself some time, but I was still binging, and it was going to get worse and worse. That's how burning out the dopamine pathways do. That's when you have a broken reward system, which so many people do, even if it's social media that's causing it on people and likes but more people are suffering from all of these things right now than ever before. And so one day I had an afternoon and Donna Martini shared this in her story, her write-up of me. And there was a little bit of a timeline correction that I wanted to make, because it says that one day I ate a bunch of fat on my really horrible homemade whole grain bread, and to make it just to see if it would be palatable, because it was just not palatable. And I was able to choke it down with some fat. I didn't eat butter. I wasn't eating butter. And I felt very different that afternoon. But it wasn't the next day that I had felt different in the morning. It was that afternoon, and it only lasted about 4 hours. And I said, that was the most incredible 4 hours I had had in 12 years. It was the only 4 hours where I didn't have an impending sense of doom, where I didn't feel anxiety. I didn't feel a ball and chain. A dead weight on me in terms of lethargy and no energy. And the most incredible thing was that I did not think about food. It was incredible to me. And I said, what in the world was that? It was incredibly distinct. And I just said, if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to make myself feel that way 24/7. And that took me at least 1 year and 3/4 to the best of my memory. And there's something that was unexpected that happened at that time. Now, during that whole time, I trial and error, went, oh my gosh, blueberries are ruining this. Whole fat yogurt is ruining this. And I couldn't believe quinoa and all sorts of, soba noodles and all sorts of things got in the way of me feeling that way. And I was ruthless. And I said, I don't care what it is. If it gets in the way of me feeling that way, it's out. And so, I mean, like apples and certain vegetables and all of that. And then as it started getting closer to it, I realized that it wasn't working unless I kept upping my fat, and that it wouldn't work if I had a big piece of protein. This is 1990. And so this was crazy because this was the beginning of the rice cake era. This was the beginning of Snackwells. And it was crazy. And magazine editors on photo shoots where I was losing weight gradually. But then at that 1.75 years was an overnight thing where my rings were spinning and my abdomen was suddenly flat, like overnight. And in retrospect, it's really not hard to believe because that's how quickly we can pooch out if we have elevated cortisol and inflammation. So I urinated a lot, just like happens to people on my 5-day programs. On about day 4, they urinate a lot and everybody looks and sees a difference in people's faces and everybody's rings are spinning. Well, that happened to me in 1990 and I had no idea what was going on. But that day I walked over to my refrigerator and everything I'd bought 2 days before did not look like food anymore. And I didn't even know what to buy. I'd been vegetarian for 7 years. And in 2 days, I ordered something that I had convinced myself was disgusting. And my body thanked me, but I wasn't really premeditating that. It happened. Not that I eat a lot of meat, but my body demanded it at that time. And so over the next 3 years, 10 dress sizes came off of me. I would walk into a clothing store and just saunter on over to 2 dress sizes smaller and just start looking and just try to guess what it would look like in about 3 weeks, because I knew I was going to fit into everything. And it's an incredible period. And halfway through, the phone started ringing off the hook. That's when I found myself in big boardrooms full of, PR people and cosmetic company executives working with Procter and Gamble and Revlon and all of that. Big smiles on their faces because they heard that the fat makeup artist, Kat James, who spoke well and really was good at makeup, that she looked finally camera ready. And that began that era. And that's the irony, is here I am and I'm just doing this. And my dad was an award-winning watercolor painter. I was always teacher's pet in art school. I knew what I was doing with color and all of this stuff. I worked with Martha Stewart personally I was her favorite for 5 years. And, just on all of these talk shows and things. And I was just quoted everywhere. You walk up to a magazine and know that I was going to be quoted in there. And it was fun. All right. So let's talk dietary myths. What did I learn and have I learned in the 33 years? Is it 33 years since 1990? That fat and cholesterol phobia kills people, ruins their lives, makes them need psych drugs. And, and that's just the start of it. Exercise is not the #1 weight loss thing. It detoxifies the body. It's incredible for the brain. It's wonderful, makes great for circulation, all of that. But it's just, for weight loss, it's hormonal, hormonal correction. And that's going to give you actually a muscle to fat ratio change that has made fitness trainers not believe that their clients weren't on steroids. And I've worked with an Olympic athlete, a Mets player, trainer from The Biggest Loser, and other fitness professionals, and they have never seen. Am I running out of time, Alex?
Okay, I just wanted to bring everybody else in so we can chat about all this.
Sure.
I'm going to stop sharing. Anything else you want to share on this?
I haven't even started with the pictures, Alex, before and afters.
Show us a couple of pictures, then we'll get back.
Okay. All right. So let's go. There's all the stuff leptin does. It's already in your body. and your white fat cells make it. It does everything. It's the body's compass. It's the master hormone of the body. It modulates every system of the body. And here are, the kinds of food that was not potatoes, by the way. Here are the people, heart attacks, given clean bills of health in 3 months when nothing could fix her for at least a year. Epileptic seizures gone, underweight gone, and dementia, out and out dementia gone in a matter of weeks. Cushing's disease, this is a couple of months after starving didn't work. Fertility, eating disorders, diabetes in every case. So I'm not finishing my sentences, so I'm not making claims, folks. Even children, that 4-year-old, if you can see on the right side, cancer, unbelievable trail of pure coincidences on cancer. And here we have a strange case on the bottom there of closed airways. And this is guy on the right says it's like Benjamin Button and his neuropathies, and able after 30 years on using flip-flops, having neuropathy. I work with a neurologist who sees the same thing, Parkinson's, ALS. The guy on the left, this past year, 100 pounds, many other things, reversal of menopause, diabetes, obesity, personality plus obesity, of course, and incredible changes of personality. And obviously, cortisol levels, thyroid function, no more bladder leaks. I got a brand new case of that. Every single time bladder leaks were reversed. This is like 2 or 3 months, both they're the co-workers. That's her co-worker right there. Those two, and they got flown out 3 months after they started this for these after photos. These are 3 months differences, and that's 85 pounds. It looks like a lot more. Eating disorders and every restrictive, and I won't even finish the sentences. 105 pounds, adenocarcinoma, Wegener's granulomatosis, all these things I've never heard of, and crumbling teeth, and recovery for athletes is insane. Better pregnancies where their doctors want to know about the program, and blah, blah, blah. And here is the next one, May 17th in the amazing Whitefish, Montana, in the mountains. And this is how you learn from home. Mastery is interactive. Coaching's over 6 months. Basic is non-interactive. And the 5-day is the accommodations. And I've done 100, and this will be my 126th. There you go. That's it. Now I will undo the share if I need to do that.
It's already did.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah. Kat, thank you. That was inspirational and incredible. What do you guys think, Dr. Rosenthal, Dr. Matone? What are your thoughts on all this?
Ladies,
Go, John.
I was gonna say ladies first.
Okay. Kat, I so believe in what you do. I don't always eat that way, but I 2 stories. One, when I couldn't lose weight after my 4th pregnancy, after giving up ice cream, candies, cookies, Atkins had come out, and in 4 weeks, I lost 18 pounds. And I'm like, well, and then when I would go back and eat carbs, it was like, oh my God. And I'm like, wow, I can eat this way and feel that way. And then one other story, when my daughter heard that I was going to be interviewing you tonight, and I said, Leptin lady. She goes, Leptin. My friend was a restrictive bodybuilder, and she was sick. No idea what was wrong with her. And they finally did blood tests after thinking it was everything else, and it was her leptin levels. And I went, you see?
Very good. And it's so different than the keto. And it's a healthy way to go, because otherwise you'll get excess protein and stress the liver, the kidneys, and set off that mTOR pathway that I'm sure Josh knows about and you know about. It's the biohackers, holy grail is to not set that off, because it makes you cell replicate instead of cell remodel, and affecting other things like arthritis, et cetera. But keto is going to give you also the turning of protein into sugar, and it always does that. And some people, like the woman I was, if I ever did keto, I never did or even knew about Atkins. And I met him later on. And I said, oh my gosh, wow, this is like what worked for me. And he wanted to have me on some TV show with him and take credit, actually. And but I appreciate him very much. But you have the problem with it turning to sugar, and people don't realize that excess protein turns to sugar, and it will completely make it so there's not even a prayer of the quantum leap that is leptin sensitivity, where you won't even see ketones on the strip anymore, because your brain is going to be using them so efficiently. And that is from the foremost clinical expert, Dr. Ron Rosedale, who identified me as the only person in the world doing what I do.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Kat is doing and has done. Kat was the first circadian regulator before people really appreciate it. I mean, that's leptin is the master controller. It's tied to your circadian rhythm, interacts with all the hormones. This is why, you know, I always tell people when you eat is more important than what you eat sometimes, because if you eat too late, you know, insulin, we know, blocks leptin at the hypothalamic level. So when you make this leptin hormone, which is supposed to tell your brain's accountant for energy, like, hey, we had this much food, you're blocking that signal. So the equivalent is like, you know, not knowing what your budget is and just going spending. And so you're not going to do well. And
you can do fat, though, interestingly, just nothing. And fat is the neutral. There's no effect on insulin, right? And
right.
So it's amazing that people can do fat. And in fact, right before bed, sometimes that lengthens their sleep. But what is amazing, and I did not know that piece, you know, and I look up something like every week, like I'll look up leptin and nitric oxide, and it's unbelievable. It leads to, you know, nitric oxide production. I'll look up leptin and stem cell. Oh, it's stem cell activation or whatever. But people suddenly, when they flip into leptin sensitivity, they become rightfully tired even night people. So night people suddenly become very tired, like at 9:30. They're like, what's going on? I'm a night person. You know, I haven't even begun my social activity online, and they're getting tired, and like, obey. You know, you obey that, and they have the deepest wave sleep. And there's another reason, but it's the autonomic nervous system balancer as well. So it definitely brings back rest and digest.
Yeah, and I think we think of melatonin and cortisol as the yin and yang of night and day, but leptin is very much geared towards nighttime secretion, you know, higher at night, lower in the day. So, you know, and this is true. Once you regain that curve, all the hormones interact, right? So it's, you know, I haven't seen its direct effects on melatonin, but now as I'm just saying it, I'm sure there are, right? And sure,
definitely
feeding back. And so when you get these systems on board, and then obviously you have all the sex hormones, growth hormone, and that's why, you know, I always laugh because people, you know, they always think this exercise is such a thing. And, you know, I applaud you fighting with the meatheads, because they don't get that. You know, it's really your testosterone and growth hormone for a man. That's what your body composition. When you take your shirt off, that's the answer of how your testosterone and growth hormone are. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not how many sit-ups you did, I promise.
Yes. And they're going to the gym after loading on carbs, and they're in a starvation famine mode.
Yeah.
And people say, wow, what are you doing, man? Because they're leptin sensitive, and all of a sudden the testosterone is freed up, and it's free testosterone that makes the difference. And all this, it's crazy. And I've had athletes, a couple of them, the 1984 Olympiad, on the phone crying and saying he's the same body composition as during Olympic trials, and he's just doing his weekend warrior thing. And I've had that with all of the athletes, and it makes people who had eating disorders cry because they were blaming themselves, and all of a sudden they turned on the body's satiety hormone, and it won't even let them eat. They're halfway through a mouth-watering plate of food. So the overeaters cry because they're angry that they weren't told about this mechanism, and blame themselves. And the athletes are angry because of how many extra time they put in the gym and how many reps and all of this, and they were working against their hormonal issue.
So free testosterone, I just want to talk about that a little bit. As we understand, it goes down as people get older. So a lot of men, I know if you follow Dr. Life, he talks about doing intramuscular injections of testosterone.
Right.
Is it possible to regain free testosterone just through diet when
Absolutely.
people are in their 50s, 60s?
Yeah, but I'm telling you, this is a very specialized mechanism. It takes patience to learn it. It's individualized. Everyone has a different threshold at which this flip happens. And little unbelievable things that I wouldn't have believed, other than the fact that I observed this. I'm doing observational science over decades. And a chewable vitamin C can interfere, and an alcohol tincture or a flavoring that has alcohol in it throws everyone out, to the point where, and you know her very well, you've featured her in interviews, and she shared this on my radio show, and she hosted, Dr. Roxanne Carfora hosted my program, and she shared this on my radio show, that just changing how I taught her to make a coffee latte, the one ingredient knocked her out of this incredible no hot flash thing, and then brought them back. And then we made them go away again by changing that one ingredient. And it is astounding. I had 2 women in my Brentwood program, again, reversal of menopause many times. And that little fructose vitamin C that this woman, I went and I showed those photos really quickly, those reversals. She was the one on the right. It's just unbelievable what little things. A man on Tums, taking a Tums at night, who was starting to not shuffle anymore with Parkinson's, and went backwards because he was taking a Tums. Little things make a difference here, and it's weird, but I'm not trying to play favorites or be popular.
So that's what it is, Kat. Simple solutions to complicated problems. Because the system isn't interested in your approach. Because it's so, I mean, it's so inexpensive, technically speaking.
Right.
You can sell it in a box to a billion people. You have to train people, and that takes time, that takes effort, that takes a commitment. And, so I just think that our kind of medicine, the things that we're promoting are more specialized, and they're more individualized, and they're more proactive. And so people who are out there in the world, you have to understand that the system at $4.2 trillion today benefits from your chronic illness. And to try to fight that by yourself against some of the most brilliant scientists, PhDs, sitting there and trying to figure out what else they can put into you and how they can manipulate your thought process and your body chemistry so you do things that are beneficial for them and not so much for you. You can't do it by yourself. You can't do it on your own. And I just want to say that, the individual person, we've been taught, when it comes to healthcare or wellness, that we should look to who's going to be paying for it. Like this mindset is just so mind-boggling. Yeah. Who's going to be paying for it? It's like having a 1970 worn out Toyota and buying expensive spinners and putting on there. This kind of mentality. Buying an expensive bag when you can't afford your rent. Your body, your health, your well-being, your longevity are the most valuable commodity you own. And why wouldn't you make an investment in that? That we've been taught that that's just a weird way of thinking. And I think the opposite of that is weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and what isn't covered by insurance, people don't seem to be interested in. They tried to monetize leptin in 1994, and when they gave it to them, unlike insulin, you can kind of get away with giving insulin to some people. They gave leptin, and people became insensitive to it. And but the mentality, it is amazing to me. What could people do with more productive years? And sometimes I hear people say, well, I'll do it after I get my surgery. And or I'll and it's like, if you got productive right now, and now I'm just going to say, like, this also changes. I try to tell people, you'll pay for it with your change in your dental future. Okay, are you happy? Because you're not going to have a different mouth. You've got a different bone future. But it is amazing how people look for validity in whether it's covered by insurance and things like that, but not the people that follow you, Alex. And
my goal is to try to change this mindset. I mean, it's not easy. They're spending $60 billion a year, the $4 trillion healthcare system, brainwashing people to believe that don't worry about anything, eat whatever you want, diet and exercise. You got to diet and exercise. That's like their thing. So people run faster, they eat less, and then they get exhausted and they get fatter, and then they just throw their hands up. They think it's their fault, Yeah. So if we can like create the infrastructure where we have brilliant people like you, Kat, Dr. Matone, Dr. Rosenthal, and other physicians who will work together as a brain trust. And like all the beautiful people we have here, Arlene, we have Benta, we have Bennett, Beth, Catherine, Chandralee, Christine, Cindy, Cliff. We've got a lot of people here. So how do we take these people and create the infrastructure? So we take those last 20 years that we get to be on this planet and get as much juice out of that time as we possibly can. How do we get these people to live longer? But more importantly, how do we get more life out of those last 20 years? So we're not spending it, drooling in the soup, depending on the $4 trillion bureaucracy that takes us from doctor to doctor to doctor and bills our insurance company to try to pull as much money out of there as possible. We become like a human guinea pig when we're that.
Absolutely. They're told every day that by their doctor on every issue, health issue that they have, that it's not curable, that it's part of aging. And it is unbelievable how there's nothing I can say to make people believe how untrue it is that everything is just because you're getting older. Every single individual thing that's happening can be affected, and I would argue dramatically, because I've seen it, and I have seen 80-some-year-olds massively transform, and their hump and their back kind of straightening out, going upstairs and without the railing, and not having their own little eating disorder, and while they're watching Korean soap operas. And then I have 70-plus-year-olds, 60-plus saying they feel beautiful for the first time. Feeling beautiful also means for the first time feeling like nature intended you to function, because leptin is a basic thing. And no, it's not an elective. It's not for some. We are all just like insulin sensitivity, and even arguably more central is leptin sensitivity, because we lose that before we even lose insulin sensitivity. So even the people who say, oh, I'm not diabetic, I'm not pre-diabetic, those people don't have leptin sensitivity. And I only learned that year after year working with athletes and Diane Lane and people that are, and she's shared about her story. And but these people, none of these healthy, so-called the healthiest of us, were leptin sensitive, and it changes your brain. Skinny people still have energy problems, brain fog problems, sleep problems, autoimmune problems. This isn't a weight thing. This is, and it affects everything. And so at every age, and things reverse, and dental fissures reverse, bone loss reverses. You're not gonna die as short, losing height, and it just works at any age. So
explain something to me, if you could. I mean, maybe our other panelists here can help me understand this. How is it possible that before, let's say 1970, most people were thin and they ate pretty much all the things you're saying not to eat? They ate sugar, they ate bread, they ate potatoes, they ate all these things. Maybe they ate a little more butter, probably. But why is it that we were mostly thin and relatively healthy before 1970, and after 1970, everybody's inflamed and obese? What happened?
1950s. You have people going to the corner malt shop, and they're taking their string bean looking photos in their class photos, and there's an epigenetic progression. And just like in Europe, they're still skinny, but I'd say they're the last generation right now who are going to start to have kids that start to show weight by their teens. You only get so many generations of that. And so our epigenetic mark was the introduction of high fructose corn syrup, in my view, and fat phobia. That is a disastrous combination that gave us all the obesity and the diabetes and all of this. And we would have to have several generations of perfection. And that's not going to happen unless all of a sudden we had some kind of a different structure as far as who was in charge with the food. And then this, World Health Organization treaty fails or something. But it's a progression. And so in the 70s, doctors started to pay attention to hypoglycemia, 60s, 70s, and I think of the American Medical Association, but they sent out a letter saying, essentially, we're not going to pay that much attention to this hypoglycemic thing, okay? And I believe that they already were planning, and they were into the margarine thing and use of an industrial material. They hated the beef industry, anything with fresh food. The cereal industry paid for a damming study that they knew would be damming as far as eggs by using oxidized egg powder instead of real eggs in a study, and they got them to show some inflammation. That was paid for by the Cereal Institute, and that was a really major thing. Then they got Ansel Keys to cherry pick some studies and put them on the, and this is about drugs. This is about seeing prescription drug stuff, but by making everyone phobic of fat, what are you going to eat? You're going to eat way too much protein, and they're making people believe sugar isn't the problem. You've got the payoffs by Domino to I think the USDA, major payoffs. And so you can't fight that if people are just looking at mainstream information. So they're going to be a reflection of mainstream information if that's what they take in. But there's a progression to answer your question. Yeah.
Well, so, one thing we have going for us, we may not have all the studies and all the research and all the scientists sitting in a lab doing our bidding. What we have is real world results that we've experienced on ourselves after many, many years of trial and error. Mm-hmm. Because some doctors don't fall into these bureaucratic, very profitable cults that have evolved in our society. Like Dr. Rosenthal, Dr. Matone, they're very passionate about bringing true wellness, beauty, agelessness to their clients and to the public at large. And so, Kat, I love, I know you for probably 20 years now, and your passion hasn't waned. I think as time goes on, you get more brilliant as you go along, but also much more passionate. So I really appreciate you doing this with us. I have a question from Susan Savage here. And I'm going to give away a couple of copies of Kat's book to the best questions and the most enthusiastic participants. So Susan has a question. She says, I was sure I'm eating healthy and going vegan. I have brain fog and not moving on the scale. What should I look to eat more of? Oils, veggies, avocado, etc.
Okay. You're going to overdo by looking for the fats in the vegetarian world. You're going to overdo omega-6, and there's no way around it. So you would have to take a bunch of supplements, and primitive man didn't have access to supplements. You will be short on your B vitamins and things like choline and carnitine and carnosine. You are simply going to be, and you're going to lose height and bone for lack of fat soluble nutrients. So you will have to take a whole lot of supplements if you're going to be vegan. I can't support it in any way. And there's no way that you're going to achieve leptin sensitivity, which is not an elective, it's an imperative. And you would only do it by overdoing omega-6, which is now emerging to be almost as bad as sugar in terms of shortening lifespan.
Sorry, Susan.
And I will say, add to that, ethically, I don't think your cat is unethical for being an omnivore and mostly a carnivore. And environmentally, there have been lies told again and again. Grass-fed is a net positive, and clearing there's no clearing of habitats for grass-fed farming. And it's if you are leaning toward working toward that carbon thing, there's no carbon sink that beats grassland farming. So supporting grassland farming is fantastic, and it's ethical. It's giving good lives to these animals, and death is a part of life, and we are obligate omnivores. We have eyes in front of our head, and we have the kind of teeth, and we require B vitamins, and your brain will shrink without them. So it must at the very least get to the health food store for those vitamins.
Susan Dobbins has a question. I gave up corn and canola and lost all ideas of what to eat. So I guess vegetable oils are probably worse than sugar.
I mean, corn and canola, obviously, if that is what you were eating mostly. This ties me into my book. My book is not my program, so you can't achieve leptin sensitivity with my book. However, because even my publisher would not let me go nutso to them in that view by putting people, and also it would be risky because there is a transition and people have to do it very carefully going into leptin sensitivity, because there's a dropout of the body's primary fuel. You could get in a fender bender if you don't understand what's happening. You could throw up. You don't know how to ease into it, and people don't read books the right way. So my book is like a great pre-program, and I truly believe that, get it, and even go on eBay or whatever, pay a few bucks for it, and it will change your life, and it will get you to go in that direction and make upgrades, the best upgrades that you can right now. And I think you will know what to do not to have canola oil and corn.
Mary Grace, thank you for sharing and holding this seminar. Our pleasure. How do you reverse menopause? Early menopause, is it related to NAD?
Metabolic, cortisol, things that affect the thyroid, stress, huge. It's interesting that outside of captivity, certain animals I am hearing, we can fact check this, don't even have menopause, but stress is huge. It affects the thyroid, sleep issues, and you fix those things. And if it came early, then you can reverse it. But again, mTOR, or cell remodeling, is how you cheat nature and have a great quality of life. And you extend perimenopause in leptin sensitivity. And you can even look up leptin and having, and getting pregnant after 40 and things like that. So it's all metabolic, and the quality of life, you can totally have amazing quality of life, even if you don't have periods anymore, as long as you fix those issues, the thyroid, and it's all one piece. It's a Rubik's Cube with leptin sensitivity. It's not like a mechanic working on each thing separately. It's the orchestrator. It's turning on the body's compass, and all of a sudden it regulates hormones.
One of the very common things I'm seeing in our society is women who are in the corporate world, and they tend to be under a lot of stress and pressure, and they usually neglect their health and well-being. And in their 50s, they become pretty much disabled because of whatever the situation is going on with them. So, I think the infrastructure, the context in which we do our lives has to be tethered to practitioners of this type here, who can help us circumnavigate all these chronic conditions one step at a time. Not when you run into the wall head first and then try to put yourself back together by going with your insurance card from one doctor to the next, but actually little adjustments here and there. You're getting a little feedback of what's happening. Why are you inflamed? Maybe you're eating oil. Like Kat said, one thing in the coffee of this doctor that she mentioned altered her entire experience of how her body interacts with the world. So also, Kat, I wanted to ask you,
I want to add deep wave sleep to that too, because they're overbooking at their lives, and then they don't get restorative sleep. And you're in fight or flight with what's going on in the world and all the pressures increasing. And this is like the ultimate wonderful crutch, is to flip into a place where you are calm in stress, and you feel like you're going 30 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone instead of 90 miles in a 50. It's an amazing different feeling, because the kind of energy that you suddenly have when you're in leptin sensitivity is a autonomic, calm energy. It's very different than using central nervous system stimulants just to get through the day. It's a totally different energy.
You mentioned high-fat yogurt, right?
Yep.
That throws people off. Why? Is it because there's so much sugar in it?
Too much sugar in it. So I'm not trying to sound popular, because that's not going to make this popular. Even full-fat Greek yogurt, there's information on how to use these borderline foods, which aren't even a thing in keto or anything else. Tons of foods like nuts that will definitely be abused And people will throw themselves out of even ketosis. They think they're in ketosis. Oh, I've got enough ketones on there. Well, they're nothing near leptin sensitivity. And so everyone abuses so many of these kinds of foods because they're little bacteria, they're pathogens and yeast and fungus, and their dopamine pathways know that they can still use these foods, even on keto, to spike their blood sugar. And when intermittent fasting, and they've got an eating window, I have all of these clients, men especially, who are eating 4 egg omelets and setting off massive pro-cancer mTOR, spiking their blood sugar, totally hitting a wall with their weight loss, and not getting rid of all their aches and pains and all the things that happen with leptin sensitivity. But they're all binging in that window, you know? And fasting is no good, by the way, for people who have food issues. It causes the rodents overate in the next meal.
Basically, we can't fast and we can't eat. We can't have bread or gummy bears. There's nothing left, Kat. It's just what are we doing here?
That
Nothing?
reminds me, Alex. So if you like decadence and you like ice cream, which I had for breakfast today, and if you you know, fasting, am I depriving you by depriving you of depriving yourself? And so what happens with rodents with fasting is they eat more at the next meal. And then the other thing that happens is the next meal becomes more drug-like, spiking dopamine. In food is not supposed to spike your dopamine. So in the wrong people, metabolically challenged people, et cetera, you know who you are, the people who binge and then they starve the next morning and then they binge again. It keeps that cycle going. And so this means don't deprive yourself in the morning. Let your brain know that you're in times of plenty. Because if you do fast, this is super controversial. You know, regular, whom I call Tarzan types, people who don't really have food issues, go ahead and fast. Please fast. But if you've got a food issue, watch out. I've seen it start eating disorder. It started mine. I have many people who said, I went on this fast and then I never binged before and I started binging. It's again and again, and it's obvious. So a lot of these biohackers, and I would argue that I might have been one of the first ones of those. A lot of those biohackers are working just with elite athletes and people who treat their body like a test tube and don't have any emotional or biochemical pull or addiction to food or anything. I'm working with the regular people, and unfortunately, the average person has a food issue. And but anyway, I just wanted to say that, and you will never feel or want what you're not eating anymore with leptin sensitivity, because the taste buds completely change. Coffee will annoy you once you're in leptin sensitivity, because you've resensitized and you don't like that kind of energy. You actually have a soaring of energy. At the same time, the weight and the appetite go way down if you're overweight, because underweight people gain weight, because leptin is the regulator of weight and energy. And so there is not any wanting or thinking about anything you're not having, because you've changed over your microbiome. You can look up leptin in the microbiome. It makes you have the slimness bacteria. The Firmicutes literally is the name of the slimness bacteria. And it gets rid of the bacteroidetes, which are the obesity bacteria, and everything's in your favor. So this is the only thing that doesn't take struggle. So I would be sorry to take away struggle if someone really feels good struggling in their bodies. But I couldn't live and wouldn't be here if this took willpower. And that's why I quit a very enviable, incredible career, because it is miraculous to this day to live in a body where there is no need for willpower, and you're in the middle of a plate of mouth-watering food and you can't eat one more bite. And it's a totally different kind of satiety, not the stretching in the body that most people have to have. And it's a different kind of hunger. It's not a blood sugar low, which all sugar burners, and almost everybody is a sugar burner, and they should only be that in a famine. All of them are experiencing hunger as a blood sugar low below baseline. So here's your baseline. We all live in peaks and valleys. And in the valleys, that's when we start in our mind's eye thinking about this kind of carb that we convinced ourselves isn't a carb and a way to spike blood sugar. And that's what we're going to eat. And we live like a pinball machine, popping that ball, keeping it from going in the gravity hole. And that's how we live. And once you're off of that, you're straight. And when you're hungry, you just ran out of fuel. It's an amazing thing.
Mary Grace says that when I was a surgical neurology fellow at NIH, congratulations, Dr. John Heiss, one of the attending, and I were working on establishing a clinical trial to insert Ommaya reservoirs and give more morbidly obese letting into the ventricles of the brain. But my question was, why not just change the diet? Less invasive, but obviously harder for those who struggle with weight gain. Right. So
Like
surgery is the first step once you become obese in all medical circles.
It's like the Ozempic. Ozempic is huge. It's a diabetes drug that everyone wants to use to get slim. And it works by the same mechanism that leptin does. And I had a woman who she's 72. She just started my program today. And she said, my pharmaceutical rep son and my doctor are saying to go on Ozempic. And Ozempic, they've got some not good cancer stuff, a little bit of cancer stuff happening in the clinical trials. And you're not getting any of the body to do what it's supposed to do. And it's artificially doing it. And you're going to gain weight and you'll be stuck taking this thing that's causing some pancreatic cancers and some other cancers. And that's a good question that she asked, because why not do it well? And she knows the answer. It can't be patented, right? There's no patents behind it. And so that's what it comes down to. And when people realize, at first, when this happened to me, I literally thought it's going to be coming out soon. It's going to have, everybody's going to know soon,
Isn't it so funny that when we were children, you and I, like 20 years ago, that we had these weird interpretations of how the world works, like health insurance wants people to be healthy. The government wants us to stay well and prevent disease. And
right.
The ADA is looking out for our best interest by protecting us from these enterprise. It's just unbelievable. Then you get to this point, like, holy.
When you learn it's all about patents, it's like, oh my God, it's never going to come out. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start wrapping this up a little bit. Why don't we choose a couple of the people that we're going to give the book away? Kat, you choose somebody, Josh, and Kelly, if you could pick a person.
Okay.
Who would like. I'm going to put my email here in the chat.
Do you want them to give you I don't know. Do you want to just choose from their names, like put them on a little thing and put the names and then pick one?
Well, we have let's see, who are the participants
I'll
here?
give you a number since there's 26 letters in the alphabet. And I could give you a number between 1 and 26.
Well, can you see the names of the people?
No, I can't on my screen.
Click on the participants.
Okay. But I don't want to be influenced by names.
Why?
So I don't know. I wish it would go to who believes, who cannot. It's not the program, who will never do the program, but at least wants to make and someone who asked a question. And I think one of them should go to the woman who asked about canola oil. I would like to really see her.
Susan.
That's Susan Dobbins. Susan Dobbins.
Yep. And because I really think that book is going to be the best thing, whereas I think doing the program will be the best thing if someone can afford it. And I would also add a scholarship, a $500 scholarship so if you want to tell Alex, if you're considering doing the actual in-person program, or I will say the mastery program, I will give now a $500 scholarship if you want to do the in-person on May 12th through 17th, or you could apply it on the next one in July, or the mastery program, which is a $1,300 program with coachings over a 3-month period, 6 coachings. So I don't know what you want to do with that, Alex. I think that we could just have people right now say $500 in their chat, just say for $500, and then get their names, and then just write their names down, and or Kelly could do it, write their names down, and then just choose one.
Okay, very good. Josh, you wanna choose somebody? Choose a winner?
I was gonna go with the first, Susan was brave enough to ask a question before we even mentioned and encourage people to. Susan Savage.
Susan Savage. Okay, Susan, a book for you. And Dr. Mattoni, you want to choose somebody?
Sure, Julia Liebman.
All right. Congratulations.
Kat, when in July, where are you going to be?
It's going to be still Kalispell, Montana. It is so beautiful then in the mountains, and that's near Glacier National Park and Lake McDonald, legendary places. And it couldn't be more beautiful. It's FCA Airport.
And what was the total price of your, was it 5 days? It's 5 days?
5-day accommodations and then the 12-hour curriculum. And then we go and do some excursions. And that is $35.50. And you're a helper in that everyone is involved in the kitchen. And that's where you want to be anyway. And sometimes you do little stuff that has to be done in the kitchen, but it is an amazing experience.
Well, I've actually attended one of your events here in the city. You did it like in, I think it was the mansion in Harlem.
Yeah.
And the food there was spectacular. It was like a festive atmosphere. After a few days, everybody became friends. It was a wonderful.
And Charles won the program through Naval Expo, and Charles went to his cardiologist the day after the program. And for, I think, decades, he had atrial fibrillation. Funny thing, his cardiologist was Jackie Gleason's cardiologist, if you can believe it. He must have been 27 years old when he was treating Jackie Gleason. And he said, stop your metoprolol. You don't have AFib anymore. And
Wow.
And that's what happened to that. And he was a vegetarian, hadn't eaten meat for, I think, 10 years. His wife, not for 10 years. And the look on her face when she had her first bite of it was from grimacing to saying, that's not half bad. It was very funny. But yeah.
All right, very good. So I would tell you this experience will be life transforming on many levels. If you're concerned about the money, I say, you're worth it. It'll transform the next decade of your life, or 2 or 3, and you'll circumvent many of the chronic illnesses that so many of us are headed directly towards. So I say do it. Dr. Jeff Rosenthal, you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do and how people can reach you if they want to talk to you or have questions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love what everything Kat is doing, because all your hormones and your circadian rhythms are so intimately connected. And, just like Kat is teaching, at her seminars, it's all lifestyle. We already said this, it's epigenetics. The choices you make and the details matter. The small choices you make influence every chemical in your body and the production therein. So, and that's what really determines the health outcome you get. It's not how much exercise and how many calories, obviously, as we know. So yeah, so people can reach me at my website, Quantum Life Wellness. You can send an email, help at Quantum Life Wellness. And I would love to hear from people.
Awesome. You want to throw your website in the chat, Josh?
Sure.
And Dr. Mattoni, tell us a little bit about some of the things you're doing in your.
So I like to take a dual approach to aging. We age from the outside, we age from the inside. You can't just do one and not without the other, only being half treated. So I like to approach sunblock and some products on the face, and maybe one therapy treatment that will just destroy your own collagen and build brand new collagen. But my real gig, and Kat, we've gone back a long way with this, is a liquid collagen hyaluronic acid. I mean, studies show all the time we become dehydrated, and you cannot drink water if you can't hold on to it. And that's where hyaluronic acid comes in. So that's my real area of focus, which turns into everything is about water as well. Josh, you and I have, gone back and forth with what we do. Same thing with Danielle as well. So I can be reached, Josh, if you could put it in the chat for me, because I am so computer illiterate. aestheticmedicalstudio.com.
Now I have to know how to spell. I mean, Kelly,
Sure.
gee. I did well in science, not in English.
I know. aestheticmedicalstudio.com.
And Alex, I want to be sure to get my number as well.
having an event in my office, May 18th, a Thursday night, if anyone's interested to come. It'll be a fun, interactive kind of thing. And Kat, I may just see you in the summer with my daughter. I'm thinking about that.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
That would be I've been at your office, Kelly, and I love what you do. And my skin looked beautiful after I saw you. And Joshua, I think that I'm super interested in the stuff that you do. And I would like to follow up with both of you. Maybe there's some overlap there. And that would be terrific. And Alex, thank you for doing this. You are an amazing dynamo, and he's helped so many people that are so talented. It's amazing. And but I want to let people also know that I will be willing to anyone who's on this call to talk with you personally, and I'm going to give you my phone number, and you can text me 917-597-2362. I believe I successfully put it in the chat.
I'm going to share it with everybody here.
My email is info@informedbeauty.com. Either me or John will answer, but you will be able to set up a phone call with me to answer further questions. I won't teach you the program during that phone call because it's 12 hours minimum. There's lots of stuff, but I will certainly tell you my history with issues like yours and what I truly believe it can do for you.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank all of our great panelists. Kat, thank you so much. Everyone who joined us here today, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming. We wish you the best of health. We wish you live a long, healthy, and prosperous lives, and we will do whatever is in our power to help facilitate that. Thank you so much. Feel good. God bless. Good night.
Thank you, Alex.